See that? All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to IVMF's VetNet webinars. IVMF, the Institute for Veterans and Military Families at Syracuse University. So I hope you and all of your family, your loved ones, anyone who you're connected with are staying healthy during this time. And I thank you for joining us, from Germany to Alaska to wherever you are located in the country or in the world. So thank you for being with us today. Our IVMF VetNet webinar today will focus on the current employment landscape for my colleagues from our research team and Veteran Career Services. My name is Ashley Cavender, and I serve as the Manager for Alumni Services at the Institute for Veterans and Military Families. So we lead this VetNet webinar that we try to host bi-monthly on different topics, from entrepreneurship to career preparation to really anything relevant for our military-connected community. So I just thank you for being with us today. For those of you unfamiliar with Syracuse University's Institute for Veterans and Military Families, we're a national-facing institute that delivers no-cost career training and entrepreneurship programming. We provide actionable and national impacting research, policy analysis, and program evaluation, and we work with communities and nonprofits across the nation to enhance service delivery for millions of veterans and their families throughout the United States. Many of you attending this webinar have either taken one of our programs or are currently enrolled. For those of you not familiar, we'll put the IVMF website in the chat box so you can learn more. We also have many on today's webinar that are connected through Syracuse University's on-campus degree programs that have a full support team through the Office of Veteran and Military Affairs, or OVMA, as we like to call it. No matter how you're connected, Syracuse University strives to be the best place for veterans through all of our resources, programs, and services. So before we start today's session, I would like to go over a few logistics. The session is being recorded, and anyone that is registered for the event will get the archived recording after the event, as well as a survey. So the survey was short. It takes 1 to 2 minutes. It's just a few questions to let us know, what you thought of today's session. Was it valuable? And then what are other valuable topics that we can continue to curate for you for future VetNet webinars? If you have any questions for our panelists today, please type them into the chat box. We'll answer as many as we can through the session, and then we can always follow up with you afterwards if we don't have time to get to your question, but we'll try and get to as many as possible. And finally, I'd like to introduce our 2 guest speakers for today's session. First, we have Rosalinda Murray, the Director of Applied Research and Analytics at IVMF. And then we have Jennifer Pluta, Assistant Director of Veteran Career Services for Syracuse University's on-campus student veterans. And with that, Rosie, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so I have a slide deck, of course, prepared. I am going to be sharing my screen, but I think also we'll be sharing the slide deck for anybody that's interested, because I'm going to try to go through some of this data very quickly, because I know that I only have a handful of minutes to discuss this. So first off, let me make sure I share my screen. There we go. Really quickly, I want to double check that you see does everybody see my slide?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, good. All right, I'm going to take myself off video because you're just going to get a side view, but I will be joining shortly thereafter. I mean, you'll see me afterwards. But what I want to talk about today is unemployment. You really start to see some of these unemployment numbers jumping probably around the April timeframe. I do want to mention that the first signs of the impacts of COVID on the economy was around late February, early March timeframe with the 2020 stock market crash. It was projected that unemployment was going to be increased at that time. Around that February, March timeframe, you start seeing people apply for unemployment insurances. However, you don't start to see the numbers truly change until that April timeframe. And that's because the time that this was collected was probably before that mid-March timeframe of impact. So there's a little bit of lag time, that February, March, that isn't accounted for. It is accounted for, but you don't see the impacts in unemployment until that April timeframe. And what I have here is the data really from April timeframe. And if you look at the graphs, you see, the unemployment rates by categories, you see the March numbers, you see the April numbers, and then you see that change in particular. So veteran unemployment went from 4.1 in March to 11.7%, just roughly about an 8% increase. The unemployment rate is lower compared to the national, so that 11.7% is lower compared to that 14.3% for all Americans that are 18 and older. I do only include 18 and older here. Some of the subgroups though, if you start looking at some of these demographics, were hit double digits, right? Post 9/11 veterans ages 18 to 34 had a significant increase, 31% for those 18 to 24 and about 8% increase for those that were 25 and 30, between 25 and 35 years of age. Women post 9/11 vet, that's that top table on the right. Yeah, I had to think about that for a second. Had almost about a 14% increase. Minority post 9/11 veterans, Black and African American, had almost about a 14% increase. The Hispanic and Latino veterans had about a 9% increase. And then older veterans, specifically those of World War II, Korean War, and the Vietnam, if you look at that first table, went from 4.1% to 17%. So there's about a 13% increase. Now let's jump to the latest data that we have. Now this data was released September 4th, and it reflects the August timeframe. And overall, if you look at those changes, a lot of them are green. So there's been a lot of decreases from the previous month. So overall, some highlights: unemployment decreased from 7.9% in July to 6.4% in August. Post 9/11 veterans also decreased from 8.2% in July to 7% in August. Now, of the 560,000 unemployed veterans that are ages 18 and over, 27% have been unemployed for less than 5 weeks, and 73% have been unemployed for 5 weeks or more. Some notable changes, the one I am looking at the top right, the top table on the right, veterans between the ages of 25 to 34 increased from 6.7% to 11.7%. Female post 9/11 veterans decreased from 7.9 to 4.5 in August. Black or African American post 9/11 veterans saw a monthly decrease from 5% to 5%, sorry. Hispanic and Latino veterans, post 9/11 veterans saw a monthly increase to 7%. Now, before I go on a little bit further, because I'm going to be talking about industry impacts, I do want to highlight, and thank God this session is being recorded because I don't have a slide for it, but I do want to talk about some unemployment rates by state for the month of August, because a lot of unemployment, although we're talking about it from a national lens, really does impact and depend on where you are in the country. And I don't have any Germany numbers or anything like that. Sorry, I don't have the data for that. But I do have it specific for the United States. So on average, Pennsylvania had the highest unemployment rate for veterans at 12.9%, followed by Michigan, which is at 12%, North Dakota, which is at 12%, Nevada, 11.5%, Ohio, 11.2%, California, 11.1%, Iowa, 9.2%, Maryland, 9%, and Florida, 8.9%. I'm highlighting the ones that are above that average. Remember, the average here, I was looking at that 6.4%. So all of these had well above that 6.4%. Now, unemployment is a useful measure for what I call underutilization in the economy. Excuse me, but it's not the only number to use when you're talking about an assessment of employment landscape. We use participation occupations and industries. And before I get into some national trends and use some other data sources, I do just want to provide some quick highlights for veteran participations by occupation and industry. And again, I'm sorry I don't have a slide for this, so I'll talk really, really slow. But definitely, I have my contact information. If you actually want some of the data, happy to share that. So the top occupations for veterans, as well as post 9/11 veterans in 2019, were in the management, professional and related occupations, professional and related occupations, and management, business, and financial operations occupations. That's a tongue twister. Industry. So majority of veterans are traditionally in the private industry, but a good number of them, about 21.5%, are in government sector. And in fact, veterans are more likely to be in government compared to non-veterans. Now, within the private industries, the top industries for veterans were in manufacturing, professional and business services, educational and health services, and retail. For post 9/11 veterans, it's a little different. So you have the top industries in professional and business services, manufacturing, education and health services, and transportation and utilities. Now, I'm going to talk about, excuse me, I'm going to talk about another data source. All the data that I've been talking about is really data on people. But another data source that the Department of Labor uses is called the Current Employment Statistics, which actually surveys businesses and government agencies. And it really talks about job losses and job gains. Now, this is also a good number to keep an eye on. And now, I didn't make these slides. All of these are from the Department of Labor, and I did include sources that has all these graphs and all this text because they did this analysis. I'm just going to hopefully synthesize it for you and provide some high-level highlights, but happy to share the report itself. It really does go into a lot of data. But one of the things that I do want to talk about, that there's a difference between people and businesses, and what we're looking at is businesses, not people. So what they did is survey all the businesses and they lumped it by industries, and you can see where the job losses or job gains have been in monthly. And the top graph right there is of April, and the bottom graph right there is of August. So in April, and again, remember I said the pandemic officially kind of started, or the recession, actually, it's been labeled a recession, officially started in February, but you weren't seeing some of these changes probably until that April timeframe. But we did see some notable decreases in job losses that were reported by businesses. The greatest one was the leisure and hospitality. So there was about 7.6 million job losses in leisure and hospitality. Now, this is national. This is not veteran specific, so I do want to note that. Another significant loss was in the retail, 2.1 million losses in retail, 1.3 million losses in manufacturing, 2.1 million losses, job losses in professional and business services, 2.5 million losses in educational and health services, and roughly about 980,000 job losses in government. Now we jump to August, which is that bottom graph right there. There's been some increases, especially from the previous month. So payroll employment rose about 1.4 million in August. Again, those have been notable increases, and certainly since May, June, July for sure. But overall, the numbers and where we are right now, as of August, was about 11.5 million or 7.6% lower than February levels. So we haven't quite recovered. And certainly, I'm not saying we're out of it yet. I mean, I think there's going to be fluctuations upcoming, especially. There's been some notable gains. As you can see, the government was one of the highest. It accounted for about 25% of job increases in August, and that was mainly due to the census 2020. They made a lot of efforts. They were hiring nationally across every community, making sure that everybody fills out their census. And as somebody who uses that data, please, I hope you have filled out that census. Really important information. But there were also notable gains in the retail, trade, and professional and business services, leisure and hospitality, and in education and health services. I think I'll just skip to the next one. So I'm going to go into some specifics now. I'm going to talk about some of the industries. This isn't all of the report. I do want to mention, I think I included that report in every single slide, a lot more information there. But retail, let's just focus on retail for a minute. So in retail, there was about 249 gains in August. Again, it's had a similar amount in July, but the levels haven't recovered since pre-pandemic or since that February. I think there's been an overall decline of 655 jobs. The jobs were widespread. So if you're going to talk about retail, the gains have been in the general merchandise stores, the motor vehicle and parts dealership, electronic and appliances, and the health and personal care stores. The economic indicators out there are mixed. You know, you have some sales increases in July. However, consumer confidence has declined in August. And if you have any questions, please feel free. I'm not monitoring the chat, but hopefully you're including that. And definitely anybody can interrupt me and I can stop and pause there. Next, I'm going to be talking about professional and business services. So employment and professional business services saw an increase of 197 job gains in August. And there certainly has been, over the past 3 months, some significant increases, but still we're about 661,000 less below the peak in February. The notable gains in terms of businesses have been in the administrative support services, as well as business support services. And certainly in the professional and technical services, the gains have been in architecture and engineering services, computer system design and related service, and scientific research and development services in the past month. Next, I'm going to be talking about private education and health services. Now, they do lump these two industries in one graph, but predominantly what they are reporting is the health service sector. And in healthcare and social, in the health sector, you've had healthcare and social assistance increased by 90,000 jobs. And a lot of that came within the social assistance, vocational, and rehabilitation services. And despite these gains in August, you're still at 1.2 million lower than its peak in February. In terms of notable gains, you have a good amount in the ambulatory healthcare services by 75,000, offices of physicians, offices of dentists, home healthcare services, and other health practitioners and hospitals have added about 14,000 jobs over the past month. Next, we're going to go into manufacturing. In August, manufacturing saw an increase by 29,000 jobs. Most of these increases have been in the non-durable goods, so food manufacturing, plastic and rubber, chemical and apparel. However, and in particular, manufacturing is not at the levels it was in pre-pandemic, which is around the February timeframe. I only have two more, leisure and hospitality. So again, this is a pretty graphic here, but employment has increased by 174,000 jobs in August. And despite adding about 2.8 million over the past 3 months, it certainly is about 4.1 million lower than February levels. And there has been some increases in the food services and drinking, but again, not at the levels it was in February. And finally, government. Government did see a notable increase in August and mainly and predominantly from the census, which accounted about 238,000 job increases, but also the postal services added about 4,000 jobs over that month. And again, despite the gains that you see, it's not at the levels at the levels it was at the pandemic. Now, oops, I went ahead. Now, one of the things that I thought, you know, we were talking about the levels and unemployment and industry impacts, but the Department of Labor did actually just recently release some projections. And these are employment projections for the it's the time period 2019 to 2029. I'll be talking about the pandemic a little bit afterwards, but let's go through some of the projections. And again, this is general national levels. This is not veteran specific. And all of this is actually available at the Department of Labor. And I've included some sources here for everybody to, if they're interested to learn more. But overall, occupational growth is expected to grow, but predominantly you're going to see the growth in healthcare support occupations, in community and social service occupations, and computer and math occupations. The healthcare in particular is probably one of the most fastest growing. It actually accounts for about 13 of 30 of the occupations that are expected to grow between 2019 and 2029. And the reason is because the demand of healthcare services is increasing. You know, the aging baby boom population, there's also an increase with people with chronic conditions, and certainly that's driving the fast-paced projection growth that you see here. But in addition to that, you have other occupations. Computer occupations are expected to see a fast growth, especially when there's a huge demand for IT, IT security, software development, software developers, and information security analysis. I have here, this is the 6 of the 10 fastest growing occupations. Again, 6 of the 10 fastest growing occupations are in healthcare, but you do see some other things. You know, statisticians, information security analysis. In the green is the projected growth, and then the median annual wages, at least for May of 2019. And this is again reported from the Department of Labor. So you can get some sense of where these occupations are and how much people make with those expectations. Finally, not finally, I have a few more slides and then I'm done. I'm going to talk about industries. Now again, industries, there's a growth that's projected to be about 3.7% over the time period. And 5 of the 20 fastest growing industries are really in the healthcare and social assistance sector. And again, I talked about the reason there's such a huge demand is because the aging population, we're living longer, and certainly the continued growth for the number of people with chronic conditions. But you see some notable increases in technology. Technology has advancements has expected to support rapid growth, especially in the professional, business, and scientific sector, computer systems designs, and the management of those particular technology. One of the things to note is that there are some expected decreases. You can see that retail is expected to decrease over this time period, manufacturing, federal government, and utilities. I do want to note that these projections actually didn't include the impacts of COVID-19. The projections were developed using models based on historical data that really covered up to the 2019 time period. So all the data that was included in these projections precede the pandemic. You know, the projections are also intended to be long-term. They're intended to capture the structural changes in the economy and not the cyclical fluctuations. And again, sometimes with the recessions, you can have these cycles. However, the pandemic certainly can cause new structural changes to the economy. And the BLS is developing alternative scenarios for these projections, but that's going to be released later this year, and happy to share that when we get those projections. These projections are conducted annually, so I think next year's and the years thereafter will already include some of the COVID impacts in particular. And with that, before I kick it back off to Ashley, and let me now share my screen, or stop sharing my screen. Well, I'll leave my thing as, but I have my video on. I just wanted to thank everybody. I have my contact information here. Happy to connect with anyone on specific questions or answer them later on. And definitely you can call. I just want to close on a closing note that it's important to keep an eye on these trends. In particular, you want to understand what industries are pandemic proof or recession proof. You certainly also want to understand what the job demand is now. And you want to ask yourself, like, if your current education or degree align with these projected growths in general. I think that these are always useful piece of information, and to some degree you can proactively prepare for changes in these landscapes. But I do appreciate everybody's time for listening. Hopefully I didn't dive too much into the data, but happy to discuss this more even later or thereafter. And with that,
thanks, Rosie. We did have some great questions come in.
Okay.
I think if you want to mute, I will briefly, just so there's not that feedback. But one thing I did want to ask before we get to the questions is you mentioned that this was going to be constantly, changing, that there's going to be new research out, all of the above. Is there a good place that you recommend attendees or really anyone going? I know the IVMF is pushing out research all the time, doing different types of research projects related to employment and the military connected community. So where's the best place that somebody could bookmark to go back and forth? Could you put that in the chat, or we could find that and put that out there for everyone? I think it'd be a really helpful resource.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and add that to the chat. My recommendation go-to is straight up from the Department of Labor, so I'll make sure to include that.
Okay, and then you actually answered, somebody had a question about, or Michael had a question about the 10-year prediction does or does not include the impacts by COVID-19. So I know you answered that, but the other question he had was industry related, when you were going through the specific industries, and he asked, so no industry from your research has recovered to pre-COVID levels?
No, there hasn't been any full recovery. In fact, economists usually, if you go to the recession in 2009, it took about, and I don't have the exact, so please don't quote me on this one. I would say it probably took about a good 2 years for full recovery. And so most economists and most labor economists are predicting that the full recovery is probably a year or 2 years out. You're going to see some improvements, and certainly in some areas, but definitely, I think a lot of it depends in particular of the COVID-19, and certainly, where we are in that state.
Yeah, great, thank you. And if anyone else has any questions, we can stop and start while Jen and Rosie are talking. So feel free to put those questions in there. They've been great so far, so thank you guys for those. So thanks, Rosie. Now we're going to kick it over to Jennifer Pluta, who is going to talk about some, action items and different things, and how you can, take what Rosie said and all this research and really put it into action for your own purposes. So with that, Jen, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Rosie, for the great setup there. I really appreciate it. Again, my name is Jennifer Pluta. I work here at Syracuse University. I'm the Assistant Director of Veteran Career Services. I've been at the university for 15 years. I'm still serving in the military. I'm a Master Sergeant. I'm actually an Army Reserve Career Counselor, so kind of fits in well with what I'm doing here at the university. I also have a master's degree in higher education, as well as 2 certifications that are related to the career field. But with that being said, I think it's really important to take what Rosie's presentation, right? And Rosie hit on it pretty well, talking about where's the industries that have been impacted by COVID, right? What industries, whether it's are there industries that are never going to recover, right? Are there industries that are going to be able to take advantage, I don't want to say take advantage, but the benefit, right, from the impact of COVID, right? You think about warehouse, e-commerce, certainly the health industry, those are to name a few. So take a look at that, the industry projections as well as the employment projections, right? And take that information and be able to relate it to what you're doing, right? Are you going to be in a career field or industry that's got that is going to have a high competition because of the number of opportunities that are available in it are so low or on the rapid decline, right? If that's the case, how are you going to differentiate yourself for those types of positions, right? It's not to say you can't go after it. It's just, you need to be well prepared and well versed in some of the challenges that might lie ahead, right? Same thing with areas of opportunity. Again, we talked about the healthcare professions being an area of opportunity, as well as business services, right? Those are areas that are almost recession proof, right? In a way, right? There's always going to be a need there. All right, so if you find yourself, in a position right now where you're unemployed, underemployed, maybe you're in transition, undecided on your next career step, or you might be, in an industry or field that is on the decline, you might want to, again, take a step back and figure out how you're going to prepare yourself. And so I'm going to go over some areas of opportunity for you, things to think about, some action items, and so that you can take that next step confidently. So the first thing you want to do is narrow that skills gap, right? So if you're in an industry or looking to pivot to an industry, are there skills that you need to either be competitive or to differentiate yourself, right? As an ideal candidate. And so to do that, there's many opportunities, right? And education is really that piece, right? So if you think about IVMF and their Onward to Opportunity program, right? They have the certificates. Many of you have taken them or are taking them. Again, you're taking them to make yourself more competitive or develop a skill set that you might not have, right? So that's a great way to differentiate yourself. Another great way to get some additional skills is LinkedIn Learning. Unlimited access to classes, right? Not only to classes, it's a really great way, like, I need an answer really quick. I need to do this social media thing. I'm not too sure how. I got this new product. Let me go on there, take like, a 3-hour course in social media basics, right? You can do that. So I would just highly suggest, getting on LinkedIn Learning. That you go through a little Q&A at the beginning so that they can set up a profile page for you so that they can make suggestions based on your interests. And so as veterans and spouses of veterans, you are able to get LinkedIn Premium for free for 1 year. And with that comes with that LinkedIn Learning. Syracuse University students get that for free. So you just log in with your credentials and you'll be able to have that access as well. So take a look at that.
And Jen, I'll just add too that if you completed an IVMF program, so you went through Onward to Opportunity, one of the 8 entrepreneurship programs through our Arsenal portfolio, through Alumni Services, you actually get access to LinkedIn Premium as well. We have those licenses for graduates once you complete the course. So after you use that free year that you get from being military connected, then you can come to us and then we can give you another year free. So don't pay for it yet until you kind of go through all of these options, but definitely reach out to us if you have any questions. I just wanted to plug that in, but keep going, Jen.
No, that's great. I mean, free is a great number, and access to knowledge and opportunities and not have that financial burden limit your access. I mean, that's a fantastic point to make. And again, another thing that you can be doing is obtaining a degree or a certificate from a higher education institution, right? There's sometimes they provide advanced certificates where you would just have to take 3 or 4 courses to get that certificate, right? So if you still have the post 9/11 GI Bill, or not, take a look at educational opportunities. Again, the 2 things you're trying to do is to close that skills gap and make yourself more marketable. All right. So again, maybe if you're doing a complete pivot, right, complete 180 on the pivot there in your career trajectory, going to school, right, might be a better option for you. And certainly one of the advantages of COVID right now is that a lot of the curriculum in many of these institutions has moved into an online format. So again, there might be opportunities now that weren't available before because of COVID. So, just be open to that, and there's no harm in exploring, okay, and finding out what's available to you. Another way to build out your skill sets is listen to podcasts, right? Podcasts have gone so far in the last couple of years. I mean, you can download them to your phone, listen to them at your convenience. The idea is to start to bundling your time, right? How do you bundle your time? You bundle your time. Well, I have to go commute. So why don't you listen to a podcast? I have to go run on the treadmill. I might as well, listen to a podcast. And when you start taking and managing your time in that way, right, you're going to be able to get more outcomes. So think about ways you can bundle your time so that you can learn new skills and diversify your knowledge base. So again, you're more competitive. Another quick place you can go to get some skills and certainly learn about from industry experts is a online platform called Beyond the Uniform. They also have podcasts as well, and they interview many industry experts and service providers. So definitely go check out that. So that's one bucket, closing that skills gap. Okay. Another bucket you can do is virtual fairs, right? And virtual fairs have been around for a long time, and really many have been around within the veteran community, because if you think of veterans, right, we're located everywhere, right? We're not located in one spot, right? So as an employer, how do I access veterans, right? They're not geographically located in one space or area. So virtual fairs have been very popular and have been proven successful. So now with COVID, right, many other industries and educational institutions are pivoting to virtual fairs. So what was once very niche is now more, is basically how we're operating right now, right? Employers are not sending their recruiters out to career fairs, right? Higher education institutions and veteran providers who support veterans in with career fairs, they're not going to open up their space to people coming all over the United States to their location. So for the future, for right now, the near future, virtual fairs is a way, right, to connect with employers. Some providers, with that being said, some providers include Hire Heroes, and I'm gonna have some of these posted on the chat here. Hire Heroes, Hiring Our Heroes, Value of a Veteran, Recruit Military, Veteran Recruiting, Career Eco. Your local, if you live in a major metropolitan area, your Chamber of Commerce may have something, or your economic department or division for your area might have a virtual fair, so take a look at that. Another area, if you're currently in school, right, your college or university may have a virtual fair. I would say go visit their career center and see what they're doing to support their students in their employment and career paths. So again, take a look what's out there. We're going to have some of those posted here for you, but doesn't take much effort. And again, it's just a great way to connect with employers who are seeking to recruit and hire veterans. That's what makes veteran specific career fairs important, because they've already strategically aligned themselves to hiring veterans. It just makes that transition or that conversation a little easier when they already know what the product that they're recruiting for looks like, right? So take a look at that. Hey, here's the other deal, networking, right? The number one, really, it's the number one way to get a job is networking, right? And I can understand sometimes networking seems, especially if you're in the military, right? It's like, why would I want to network? It seems so fake or forced, or seems so like pompous and self-serving, and I can understand that, that word sort of has that connotation to it, has that feel or vibe to it. But I like to encourage you to redefine that word networking, and redefine it as information gathering, okay? And when you do information gathering, what ends up happening is you're gonna make a better decision, right? The more information that you acquire, right, the more informed you are, the better opportunities exist, the better decisions you're gonna make, right? So asking questions and asking people about their career journey. How did they get in their field? What do they like about that employer? What advice would you give to someone in my position, right? Those become more genuine sort of questions, right? Not a self-serving like, hey, here's my resume, would you hire me, right? And that's very off-putting. So think about ways you can start building out relationships. There's obviously platforms that can help you do that. LinkedIn, obviously, we're going to go back to LinkedIn. The whole premise of LinkedIn is networking, right? But you can also search for jobs on there. You can follow employers. You can talk to recruiters. And again, asking recruiters like, hey, I'm looking to explore this industry or field, or I'm very interested in your company. What do you like about your company? What do you dislike about your company? Tell me why did you decide to work here? And they love those questions because it shows them your interest, that you're engaged. So, don't hesitate to connect with employers. Another great resource is American Corporate Partners. You fill out a survey and you can get connected to a mentor. I've just heard, so from my student veterans, this resource, I can't begin to express how much they valued this resource. I would say if you have used it before, go ahead and put a chat in there or put a comment in the chat and maybe let us know about your experience, good or bad. Would love to hear about it. Veterati is another great resource, to connect with industry experts for career advice. So definitely check out that. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Rally Point, even though Rally Point is sort of like the Facebook, LinkedIn of veterans and military. Again, you can connect with an old, first sergeant or commander who can help, who's maybe working at a company, right, that you might be interested in. Or maybe you need a recommendation, or maybe you just need career advice, or be asked, say, hey, I see that you transitioned from this occupation or MOS into this civilian career. How did you do it? What advice would you give me? So that's just another resource to go and make that connection. Again, if you're currently enrolled in a school or college, connect with see if they have an alumni network. It's another great way to connect with industry experts, and certainly for people who are passionate about helping their own within their, their own, alums or their own, people from their own school and college. So, and finally, professional associations. Professional associations sometimes have their own job boards, networking opportunities, career or workshop opportunities as well. But that might be another great way to kind of network and get yourself connected and plugged in. All right, guys, got 2 more buckets. All right, so during this time of COVID, it may be a really great opportunity to revamp your resume, okay? And what does that mean, revamp it, right? Like some of you are probably like, I have a resume, it's done. I don't need to change it. And that's not how that works. So resume is a never final product, right? Your resume should be refined, critiqued, and what I call engineered, right? You want to engineer that resume for that field, that industry, or that position, so that the employer, in those 5 to 6 seconds that they look at it, and that's how long they actually look at it, can see right off the bat that you're the ideal candidate. And so, I would encourage you to learn how to do that, right? And you can do that by, there's many resources out there. Certainly if you've gone through TAP, they'll give you a version. If you go to Hire Heroes USA, they'll, give you some, their perspective on it. If you have a mentor, again, have them look at it, or a faculty member or staff member from your school or college, or the Career Center. Even if you've already graduated, many schools and colleges still see their alumni. So go ahead and try to circle back with your school and college that you graduated from and see if they offer those comparable services that you're going to look at your resume, or offer any other career support. There's also other online tools on there that will actually review your resume and give you instant feedback. For example, Syracuse University uses a provider called VMOC. We just started using it, but it uses artificial intelligence to provide instant feedback and really focuses on language and, and maybe words that are being overused, or the right tenses, or the grammar, which is all really great, cool, immediate feedback, because those are things you really want to make sure are cleaned up in your resume. So, I would suggest, again, you can have many variations of your resume, all right? You can have an operations one, you can have program management, you can have human resources, and you can just toggle the information around, based on how you're going to use it. So I would say just take a look at this, take a look at your resume and your cover letter, and just see if there's anything that you can do to reshape it and reframe your messaging on there. Finally, you also want to know who's hiring, right? We're doing networking, we're going to career fairs, we're getting our resume ready. How do you know who's hiring, right? I mean, we kind of know who's hiring from the career fairs there, but how do you know? Where's a good place to start, right? And so what I would suggest to you is one area that is to our advantage as veterans is find out who's hiring veterans, right? what companies have made it their strategic initiative to hire veterans? Which companies have put resources, both financial and human, to recruiting veterans? Who are they, right? Because finding those, they're not going to stop recruiting veterans, right? So I would suggest try to find those employers and see if they align within your field or industry that you're looking for. You know, you can find out this information. There's
and that defense is nothing to sneeze at either.
Oh, someone's got the thing on. Okay. Thanks, Michael, for the update. There's many different resources or websites that you can do. Military Times, for example, puts a list out every year of the top military-friendly employers. Military.com also has military hire, military benefits. Those are all great, great starting points to see who's who in this space that's recruiting veterans. And then usually what you'll find is that that company has a dedicated homepage for veterans, so that they can tell their story to the veteran community, tell their story and inform veterans on how to get hired at their organization. So I would definitely suggest looking into those websites. You would also, another idea, once you have this information, once you know who these employers are, again, go to their website, but take it a step further by starting to engage with them on Twitter. You can follow them on Facebook, you can engage with them on LinkedIn. And then depending on the field and industry, they might be have more of a presence, right, on different social medias than others. So just be cognizant of knowing where that employer resides within the social media space, and then I would say start engaging them. However, with that being said, I would make sure that your own social media is clean, right? Because they're going to be able to see that. So if you're going to engage in social media, just make sure you have a nice, either have a professional profile or clean up your stuff, because you don't want that to be a showstopper for you. And the last thing, hopefully we got enough time here for some questions, is to know your own skills, right? And we kind of started the conversation about closing that skills gap, right? But how do you know what skills maybe you have that are strong, or maybe that you're lacking? Or what are your personality traits that you think are well aligned with certain fields and industries? Perhaps you want to know what your strengths are. And so what I encourage you to do is you can take assessments. And I think we have a couple that are going to be posted here online, but there's lots of assessments. There's some that are free, there's some that you pay for. Strength Finder is a great one to understanding your strengths. And if you understand your strengths, right, well, then you can play that up, meaning you can articulate it in your resume, in your cover letter, through your networking and your interviewing, right? So having that self-assessment of what do I have to offer, and especially if it aligns with your career goals, that could be very advantageous. The same thing with your skills, right? What kind of skills do you have that fall well in line? And again, if you can articulate that and communicate that skills, you're going to be able to show to the employer that you're an ideal candidate. And finally, your personality, right? God forbid you have a personality that doesn't fit, with a certain field or industry. And while you might think in your head, I'm attracted to this field or industry, you might find out after taking, again, this is just information to know, you might find out it goes against your grain. I've had students here who go to business school and they want to be in the financial industry in New York City, and they realize it's a cutthroat industry. It's long hours, you might be doing questionable things. You might, I found some students, it was against their grain, right? That wasn't where their values are, right? They wanted to have more work-life balance, right? So understand yourself and then the industry that you're going into. I did post a link on there. OnNet is a Department of Labor website, okay? You can do a couple different things on there. You can, for veterans, you can go and plug in your MOS or your military occupational skill. It'll show you how it aligns to civilian jobs. You may not want to do those kinds of jobs. For some of you, that's probably why you got out of the military, right? So but that information might be good to use when you write out your resume and then just trying to find those transferable experiences. You can also, and this is really great because a lot of this information that Rosie presented, you're going to see it on here, okay? So when you look at specific occupations, it's going to tell you the outlook of that specific job. And if you remember Rosie's presentation, she had those like those employment projections. That's all going to circle back to here, okay? Also in ONET is that personality thing. So if you know your personality type, it's going to tell you people with these personality strengths tend to be successful. It's also going to tell you what education level you need in there. It's also going to tell you the career progression. So also understanding the job you want to get into and the skills necessary and the types of roles and responsibilities. If you've done those things, right, you can incorporate that into your resume. So understanding the language and the roles and responsibilities will help you out in the long run. So take a look at ONET, super great resource. Again, it's all rooted in data and a lot of that Rosie presented, but it's a way to kind of keep this is a way to keep this conversation sort of like in full circle from what, you know, Rosie presented to the information I presented, and now this great resource. So those are just some ideas for you. Again, try to think about this sort of what you do now and sort of like buckets, and then within those buckets, what can I tackle, okay? So, you know, I hope you learned something from this, and, you know, certainly you guys can, you know, hit me up in the chat or email if you have any questions, but right now I'll just hit it over to Ashley and see if there's any other questions.
Thanks, Jen. And thank you both. All the knowledge that you guys have just provided, I know that the chat has been going crazy with all the resources, not only that we've been providing, but that others have been providing from their own, you know, viewpoint. So that's just to say there's a ton of resources out there for you to utilize, but it's up to you to take that proactive step to look into the industry resource, look at what industries and careers might be, you know, valuable and beneficial to you, and then, you know, what are those resources that are going to help you get there. So that's what we've hoped in general that we've been able to bring you today. We did have a couple questions come through that I want to pose to you guys. The first one was about preparing a federal resume, and we actually, I just sent that link in there. We actually just sent in our newsletter one from USA Jobs. So I sent that link in there. I think they have more, but we can always send more if others have them. The other question we got was back to your, I think when you were talking about college programs that veterans can take advantage of. So Donnelly asked, what is one to do if they have no GI benefits left, but need to make a pivot to find work? So do you just have a general answer to that question?
I mean, so I do understand that financing your college degree, if you don't have that finances, it could be a barrier to obtainment, okay? While the post-9/11 GI Bill and other GI Bill benefits are, you know, it's a great benefit, right? We all benefited from it. But when that's no longer available, what can you do, right? So there are scholarship opportunities available, okay, for veterans. If, for example, if you go to Student Veterans of America, they have some that are regularly promoted, okay? Also go to the institution's financial aid office. They might have some scholarship opportunities or other dedicated funding streams for veterans, okay? There are also, again, maybe going to a community college, right, or an online community college where that price point is going to be less, right? That's also an option, all right? So I would say, you know, explore scholarships, explore the institutions, you know, financial aid, as there may be some other opportunities there, but, you know, but don't just say, just because I don't have GI Bill, I should not look into getting or receiving a degree or education, right? Go out there, ask questions. You know, the only thing you could do is ask, right? So keep, you know, ask these schools and colleges. You have no idea. Sometimes they have programs and opportunities that might exist that, you know, that you've never thought of, right? Every school and college is different. So I would just take that. Don't let the no money thing stop you from getting a degree. Make it happen. You can find the way.
Thanks, Jen. The next question was about when you talk about networking. So I know you mentioned a few resources, but are there programs or specific types of counseling, different resources that can help those who struggle with networking? So is like a LinkedIn Learning, would that be the best resource?
That's a great, yes. I mean, Ashley, that you hit it right in the head. I mean, LinkedIn Learning actually has a whole thing about networking on there. And I've actually, I'm always trying to learn new things so I can help better serve my clients, which is my student veterans. I've gone there a couple times and checked out some of the networking ones and, professional growth and so definitely go on there. There is, so again, sometimes for an introvert, again, I think it can be difficult. So I would say look at this, Google informational interviewing, okay? Informational interviewing is essentially networking, but what you're gonna find is they're gonna give you some questions, they're gonna give you some strategy, but again, I think it's all about how you approach and define how you personally view networking, and again, I would say try to look at it as a positive experience.
Yeah, and I think your reframing of what you call it, information gathering instead of networking, I think is it helps get over the term networking, because networking comes with so many different, feelings that, depending on the person. So
I was going to say, I really like the reframing. Think of it as information gathering, because that really does change that and pivot that direction. So I really liked that. You don't think of it as networking, it's information gathering. The only thing I will also add is really quickly, sorry to jump in.
No.
Thing about as much as we want to get advice about how did you get to where you are and where you're going, and you're really talking about like how to upskill yourself, I would say even use networking as a potential information gathering about the employers and the companies that they work in, because it's not just a job, it's a career, and it's also about alignment, and I think Jen had said it, like, you may not be a great fit, and it might be for the industry, but it also might not be a great fit for the employer as well. So use that information gathering to get and seek information of how they treat their employees as well. And I think with that pivot might get at some of that information.
Yeah, great point, Rosie. A resource for that is Glassdoor is a really great resource, because it gives you reviews of that organization. So again, is this for me? Is it a good fit? That could be another resource, to use as well.
Great, thanks. And I know we have 3 minutes left, so I'll give us one more question and then I'll close us up, because I have some last minute remarks for everyone. But in your opinion, the best way that you can possible answer this, what's the best way for a military spouse to explain the gaps in employment history? Do you have any way to answer that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I totally get this. I would say don't do a chronological resume, because that is it's not going to be conducive for a military spouse or anyone who has had gaps, right, or moves around. Plus, as we develop in our careers, right, if you do a chronological resume, it just becomes this big laundry list, right? So I would suggest going to a functional resume or a functional chronological, which is the hybrid between the two. But what that does for you, and this is how it answers your question, if you align yourselves, if your message, your story is about your skills and that you've mastered, areas that you excel in, rather than the gaps, you can now control the narrative. So that's why I would suggest controlling that narrative. Don't go out, don't start the conversation and say, well, I'm a military spouse and I have gaps in my resume. No, you start out the conversation and say, I have, my strengths include, I have experience in, and it'll, again, they won't see that. I mean, it's not that you're hiding it, but you're letting your skills and your experiences be what's you're showcasing, not the dates of your employment, right? And again, I would include volunteer opportunities. I mean, that is tangible skills. Those are tangible experiences. Even there's things like, you know, if you had like some side hustles, right? Like you're selling some stuff on the side, some, you know, where you're doing some, you know, I don't know, you know, selling some whatever, right? Whatever you're doing, right? Just doing some little things to make money. Don't forget to not, you know, definitely want to include those, right? Because that shows your ability to be in, you know, work independently, manage time, manage finances, you know, plan events. So just don't discount the skills and experiences that you do have. Be strategic in how you show it. Okay.
Great, thanks so much. That was a great answer. So thank you both. You know, we're just at time, and I do want to be respectful of everyone's time, our speakers and our attendees, knowing that it's the middle of the workday for most, and maybe the end or beginning if you're from Alaska or Germany, like some of our guests today. So thank you, Rosie and Jen, for all the information, for the resources, feedback that you guys have provided all of us today. For everyone attending, this session will be posted on the IVMF YouTube page for future viewing access. I know a lot was shared here. So what we're going to do is we're going to get it uploaded, get it all set, and then we're going to send up a follow-up email. And I know I posted in a chat that we're going to include the video, you know, some of the resource links, the presentation links, everything that we've gone over here that we can share, we'll share in that email along with some contact information. But then we'll also put in, you know, again, that 1 to 2 minute brief survey that has just a few questions that really help us gauge, you know, is this the type of content that's valuable to you guys? Are there other topics that you would like us to cover in future sessions that would be valuable to your employment? So please let us know. We can always, you know, work to curate the content that's going to be valuable to you. So also be on the lookout for upcoming VetNets. We have some coming up with Hire Heroes USA. I think we're bringing on employers from Amazon and Travelers and a few others in October. So if you're looking for employment or want to speak to employers, that's definitely one that you're going to want to be on. And our goal remains to do these twice a month. So stay on the lookout, keep connected with us. We'll continue to keep connected to you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and stay healthy, everyone. Thanks.